With Dylan Guenther sent back to the WHL, where do the Coyotes go from here? We're going to tell you why it was the best decision for both Arizona and Guenther on today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio. That's Carl Pavlak right beside me. On today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast, I want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, and that includes on YouTube. We got a good show. On today's episode, we're talking Dylan Guenther, who got sent back to the WHL over the weekend. Lots of talk about this, Carl. People kind of going back and forth about why it was done and, if there was a good decision for the Coyotes. And I'm going to tell you, it was a great decision for the Coyotes.
Yeah, I think it was the right call by the Coyotes. Guenther definitely had a resurgence since coming back from the World Juniors, but he was far from the most consistent player with the Coyotes. It really seemed like, getting him down to the WHL where he could play meaningful games while not burning a year towards UFA status. It's the smart call all around.
Absolutely. There's so many ways you can tie that. And I guess we can start off with the fact that he gets to play meaningful games. Because we talked about the Coyotes in tank mode. And that was one of the biggest questions you and I had to Dylan Guenther, even going past those 9 games, right? It's like, yeah, but what kind of team was this Coyotes team really going to be? And is it really going to be worth Guenther just staying here? And is it going to be good for his development? I think it was good for his development to stay as long as he did. But knowing what the Coyotes are going into the latter half of this season, there's no use for him staying up with Arizona. It's like, okay, you kind of did your bit. Now play those meaningful games. We have the Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL because the Seattle Thunderbirds are a really good WHL team.
Yeah. I saw that Chris Peters tweeted out that they have 5 first-round NHL draft picks on their roster, which is just insane for a junior team. I think he is definitely going to play like meaningful games with some high quality talent. You do worry about like a player playing down in a different league. Competition level isn't the same. I think there's a lot that Guenther is going to learn and continue to grow in the WHL. And, he looked good in the NHL. He looked like he was like at, level. If he was a year older, I could definitely see him sticking around. But I think he is also going to be looking great in a couple years. And putting him down in the WHL for like an extra half a year, that's only going to improve that.
100%. And people will. I know there will still be people that will say, he's too good for juniors. Then why send him down? Because if he looks like he belongs in the NHL, then why send him down in a place that's, talent isn't as good? As you just mentioned, the Seattle Thunderbirds having the talent that it has, you can make that argument all you want, but major junior CHL hockey is so much different than the junior level hockey here in the States. And I'm going to say it that way, because a lot of people who play in the USHL, some are lucky enough to make it to the NHL and right away. But most of the time, they go to college and they spend so many years in college before they finally make it. These kids in the WHL, they're absolutely good enough to make that jump to the NHL Now, Dylan Guenther is a perfect example of that. But teams have to be smart on how they project development on their players, on their prospects.
Yeah. And I do think it's also important to note out that, or to point out that when we say Guenther was playing good in the NHL level, he was playing on like mostly the third line. Like he wasn't a top line NHL player. For comparison, Clayton Keller, his rookie season, had 23 goals, 42 assists in 82 games with the Coyotes. And that was after 1 year in college hockey. Um, Dylan Guenther, on the other hand, I had his stats just right here. Sorry.
But yeah,
Hang on. Right now, 33 games, 6 goals, 9 assists. So there's definitely like a big difference in kind of what Clayton Keller was doing in his second year after being drafted and what Dylan Guenther did in his second year after being drafted. And I think Guenther looked great, but I don't think he's at the level that he needs to be the player that we want him to be. We don't want Dylan Guenther to be a third line grinder.
yeah, absolutely, because you and I have said it. Guenther looks like he belongs in the NHL, but right now looks like a middle six versus a top six. The Coyotes and Coyotes fans, and even I think the Coyotes coaching staff fully expect him to be a top six forward in this future team.
I mean, I think they expect him to be a top line, like not
Oh,
even
absolutely.
top six.
Top six is being conservative here. He's absolutely supposed to be like a first line winger.
Yeah. I saw someone put out like anytime we're talking trade talk, top six means second line, middle six means third line. If they were top line, they would say that they were top line, and that holds true to me. But yeah, no, I think Guenther has a next level, and I don't necessarily think the NHL is the right place for him to reach that next level this season. It would be great if we could send him to Tucson. Um, that would be amazing. I
Hey, he
feel
has
like the United States and Canada would need to go to war over that.
half a year in Seattle, and then next year, if he's still not quite there, he can spend a few days in Tucson.
Yeah, like start up, be an early call up. We've definitely seen it before. Like I don't even think he's going to need to start in Tucson just because he has like the experience from this season. Like I am ready for him to take that next step. He is much further along in his development than I think either of us thought, though. I think that's very important to point out. Like we didn't even expect him to make the team.
You and I were skeptical whether or not he was going to make the roster, right?
Yeah.
Like I think you and I were just at the time we're just like maybe give it to him and just give him a test, those test games and see what happens. But that's at best. I still think it's best that he spends his year back in Edmonton at the time because Edmonton still retained his rights. And I was like, well, then I was like, okay, maybe just give him that chance. And then after the 9 games, I'm like, you know what? It's a hard call, but maybe he deserves to stay. Yeah. And we had to go through all that.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't even think we talked about Edmonton trading his rights to Seattle because it seemed like such a non-story at the time because all of the picks were conditional. And it was just like, hey, he's not going to go down. He's up. He's burned that first year of the ELC. And I think that, it's the right call and good on Seattle for like going all in on what I'm sure is going to be like a deep playoff run. If not, someone's probably going to be fired.
Oh, absolutely. So if you're a Coyotes fan, pay attention to the Memorial Cup this spring. Might be fun.
And make sure to unfollow the Edmonton Oil Kings and follow the Seattle Thunderbirds.
Absolutely. You can also feel follow the Winnipeg Ice, but that's for a different reason. That's for another
Yeah.
prospect.
Definitely follow the Winnipeg Ice. If not just because their name is capital I, capital C, capital E. It's just very fun.
Yeah. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Anyways, though, we're in just a little bit. We're going to talk about the some of the implications of this this move of sending Guenther back, as well as take a look at another future player for the Arizona Coyotes. All that just coming up in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick word from our sponsors on the show. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We are really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they are the #1 sportsbook in America. FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports so fun and easy. You can download the FanDuel app now. Bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. You get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. I'm personally taking a look at this, the upcoming Super Bowl, Carl, and I think I'm going to put some money on the on the Kansas City Chiefs. But Patrick Mahomes is just too good. So, you can do what you want. If you are a Super Bowl fan, if you're a betting fan, FanDuel is the place to go. FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy. Best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So let's talk a little bit more, Carl, about the implications of the Coyotes sending back the Dylan Guenther to the WHL. And first, you mentioned it in the first segment. I kind of want to bring it up very quickly. Is the contract implications towards accruing a year's UFA status. A lot of people seemed confused what that means. Some people thought, it doesn't really mean anything to the contract because he already burned his first year as ELC. There has to be a certain amount of games, Carl, that a player plays in a season before it counts as a season for among games for you to be an unrestricted free agent when that time comes. Is it going to matter in the end because Coyotes are going to retain his rights for how long? But it's an interesting tidbit that's being put out there.
All right. So let me just read from puckpedia.com, a great reference. Anytime we are talking about contracts in the NHL, I always need to go to a reference because everything is ridiculously complicated.
Absolutely.
This is a Group 3 UFA situation. As the most common type of UFA, a player becomes an unrestricted free agent if their current contract ends after either 7 accrued seasons or they are 27 or older as of June 30th. An accrued season is defined as a year in which a skater is on an NHL roster for at least 40 games. And I believe he was on the roster for 39. He played in 33. I need to verify that. But yeah, so I think it's important to point out that Dylan Guenther is probably never going to reach this status. He is going to get a contract to extend him, hopefully
past that 27 or whatever. The Coyotes are going to hold on to him to however long they want to try to hold on to him for.
Yeah, he definitely seems like a player destined for a long-term deal. But yes, there are some UFA stipulations for this. I am, I was unaware of it. I wasn't really thinking about that most of the time when we're talking about players, because I think this is kind of the year where we're seeing the situation, because we saw it with Shane Wright as well. Just like, hey, we're starting prospects for longer earlier on. I kind of think that's cool. But yeah, I was mostly thinking about the ELC slide, which is a completely different scenario.
It's a completely different scenario. That means that, that first year of the ELC doesn't even go into effect But this one is just like, okay, yeah, that first year of the OC is taken care of, but accrued seasons towards the UFA does not.
Yeah.
And like we said, it doesn't really matter in the end because the Coyotes are going to retain that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, look at what they did with Clayton Keller, Jacob Chikrin, Dvorak, like, and then most recently, since this is the only one that Armstrong signed, Lawson Krause, like signing the longer term deals in RFA status, get them locked in while they're young, especially with a player like Guenther. I think he is a player who's going to pop early.
100%. And like you said, he's this guy's a ceiling top line forward, and there's no reason not to worry about that.
Yeah. It was just kind of like one of those like implications where, like I said, nobody knows anything about contracts unless you're an agent for an NHL player, or probably not even an NHL player. I'm sure they let their agent and managers handle all that. Like anytime one of these weird situations happens, you're like, what's going on? And then you have to just look up a bunch of rules or read or listen to anything we write or say. And you can learn it there.
Because we're the ones that dive into the CBA and actually figure out what counts.
Yeah. You don't want to read the NHL rule book like I have. It is very tedious. And you can just follow us and we'll provide that information to you. Don't use Google. It's not your friend.
No, no, absolutely not. Couple other things that I'll bring up. Some of the implications here, Carl. Immediately after the Coyotes had assigned Guenther to the Seattle Thunderbirds, they had recalled a player from the AHL in J.S Dea, which is an interesting one. A player that I don't think any of us have really talked about, but kind of made a little bit of noise in Tucson for a brief minute.
Yeah, he's having a good season. I don't necessarily think he's going to be up long term. We're going to talk about why in the next segment, but he's definitely the type of player you kind of reward with that cup of coffee, recall him, give him his NHL salary for a couple of days. Got to play in a game with the Coyotes against the Wild, which, since they won that game, maybe he'll stick around a little bit longer. You don't want to necessarily mess with that chemistry too much. But yeah, I don't foresee him as like a long-term solution just because, he's a little bit older. We know where he is going to be as a player. I think it's just a good thing to reward an AHL veteran. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I think that's the thing. You have to take a look at who in the Roadrunners roster kind of deserve to get at least a little bit of a shot, get a little bit of a look. There are a decent amount you could probably give a look to, but a very short list on is like, okay, who's gonna step into what Guenther's role was in this very short term until we figure things out even more. And J.S Dea, I think, kind of fits that mold. Kind of like, okay, this is where he's gonna be, and that's one reason. And there's another reason too I can really get to on that, Carl, and that's the fact that probably, very likely, who could have been the case is they didn't want to call up their other guy because he was busy doing some awesome stuff in Laval.
Yeah. Michael Carcone was busy. So they called up someone, strangely enough, from Laval. I think that's funny. J.S Dea is from Laval, Quebec. But yeah, I definitely think that was one of those things where I saw people ask. They were like, "Hey, why isn't Carcone getting the call up?" It was like, I'm like, "Hey, why isn't Carcone getting the call up? I bet something's happening." And then it's like, "Oh, AHL All-Star game. Let him do that. Like, it's
Yeah,
fine. Like,
let him have
let
fun
him be
there.
an All-Star."
Speaking
I
of
know.
Carcone and All-Star, let's talk about that in just a moment. We're gonna talk about how he did there, and what some of his performance means for his future with the Coyotes in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
Today's episode brought to you by Built Bar. We've just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. I started off kind of rough, really trying to straighten that out. And one of the things that's really helping is Built Bar because it's healthy, that's actually tasty. Seriously, they're very good, very delicious. You won't think they're good for you. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. What I want you to do is you can head to your nearest Walmart today, walk up to the pharmacy counter, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. Or head over to Sam's Club, where you can get a 13-bar box with flavors like brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later.
So let's now move on, Carl, and talk about Michael Carcone because I think it's really important to talk about him because this guy is another, future player for this Coyotes organization. He just finished over the weekend at the AHL All-Star Classic. The NHL All-Star Weekend was Friday and Saturday. The AHL All-Star Weekend was Sunday and Monday. Carcone got a chance to be part of that, representing the Roadrunners, and doing it in some of the best ways possible.
Yeah, I definitely think he is a future piece of the Coyotes. Kind of coming out of nowhere for that, but just developing really well. What you hope a player would like him would do, having a great season with the Roadrunners, and already played 9 games with the Coyotes.
Absolutely, and I think all to deserve it too. Even based off how he performed in the AHL All-Star Classic, we have some of his stats that he was up on there too. Looking at it, he was in the All-Star. The skills competition is different in the AHL, Carl, because you have players who can actually participate in multiple events rather than this player is going to participate in just this event.
Did you see the AHL president threw shade at the NHL All-Star?
Oh yeah,
that was great because the NHL All-Star game, I think the skills competition was kind of viewed wholly as meh, and the AHL president was just like, "Hey, our players pick our stuff, and they seem to really like it. It's a good time." I'm like, "Oh, sly burn there."
I think that a lot of people were questioning the NHL All-Star game and how weird the results was for their fastest skater competition because it's like, oh, did we really have a real winner by the time everything was all said and done? Versus the AHL All-Star where, yeah, there's definitely a winner. Carcone was not the winner. He actually finished second. But
Second's good.
But hey, the second's still good. And second of 13.282 seconds, Carl. 13.282 seconds of a full lap around a regulation ice rink.
Very, very good.
Very good. Yeah.
I could not do that.
No.
I've
timed myself, and I am more than double that.
I would fall down multiple times because I am not good at skating. But good.
Good for
Carcone.
Carl. We should have a special video episode where we get you to do some skating drills with us.
That seems horrible for me, but sure.
We're gonna do it.
Okay. But yeah, good for Carcone. Like I said, he seems like he's ready to make the break to NHL player. With Guenther gone, I think he is likely going to be called up soon. Having him be fast is very key for this team. Because I think if he can be fast, he can create offense. If he can stick around, if he's the second fastest player in an AHL All-Star game, I know that's not a 1-to-1 analog with the NHL, but it's going to show that he's going to be able to at least keep up.
Oh, 100%. And keep up with some of the NHL's fastest, because that time, even in NHL standards, is incredibly fast.
Yeah.
I think, Connor McDavid can hit the 12s, but still, like, that's a 1 second difference. Like, still pretty damn close.
I mean, let's put it this way. Carcone would not finish probably top 5 of the NHL fastest skaters, but he could probably beat a fair amount of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's all you really need to do. You don't have to be like the fastest. You just have to be fast enough to compete.
Wow, 100%. And that wasn't the only thing that Carcone kind of did over the weekend with his AHL All-Star stats. There was his stats as a player in the All-Star Classic itself, which runs the same style tournament as the NHL does, with divisions and who wins in the end. But Carcone was on the winning team, the Pacific Division. I think was that the Pacific Division's? I think that could have been their first win. I can't remember the last time the Pacific Division won the AHL.
I believe it's their first win, according to the things you were saying before the episode started.
Yeah.
But yeah, good for the Pacific Division this season. It seems really stacked. If they're winning the All-Star, and I think you said that they won the skills competition overall, or the Western Conference won the skills overall.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So solid representation there. That's good for Carcone. It's always good to be
actually the Western Conference did not win the skills. It was they fell to the Eastern Conference 16-10.
All right, then I take back all of my praise of Carcone. He should have been better. No, I'm joking. It is good that they won the games that mattered. I will just say, I wish the AHL website was better at displaying the scores of these games, because it's very not good.
If you are an AHL fan and you have followed the Roadrunners for as long as, let's say, I have, because I've been doing the Roadrunners coverage for 6 years before moving up here to the Valley, the AHL stats website is the absolute worst. I've had to dig on multiple occasions to find historic stats and other stats to get, stories out. Luckily, for the main part, I had quite a lot of media guides given to me at games and other stats that I was able to turn to. If it weren't for those, I would not be able to survive, because the website I just can't use.
Yeah, and like even the individual team websites, which are uniform, like the NHL sites, they're just not good. If you are the web designer for the AHL listening to this podcast, I apologize, but someone should replace you and just completely overhaul everything. It is very difficult to access AHL stats.
Yeah. Also, just in general, AHL stats are significantly less in info than NHL stats.
Yeah.
There's no time on ice on there. There's no think some of the ones. Think of it as the only things available are like basic stats: assists, goals, plus minus, penalty minutes,
games played.
That's it.
Yeah, pretty much. That has been my general view of it. They're usually not sortable. It's very difficult to like sort by penalty minutes for anything. Just kind of gotta go down a list that's most points at the top.
You can filter out rookies though.
Yeah, which I mean, that is a very useful feature for the AHL, because I imagine a lot of people are going to be looking specifically at rookies to see like who is going to be making the jump next season. But
I mean, I was doing that last year. I think maybe a little bit of you too, with Matias Michelli was playing at the Tucson Roadrunners.
Yeah. I have definitely looked at rookies. I just wish that they put that same level of care into all of their
everything
stuff.
else, into everything else. First that, then focus on AHL TV.
Yeah.
If you listen to us, AHL people, take our advice.
Yeah. And if you are someone who knows how to make a website that's really good for like sorting charts, just make a better AHL stats website and give it to them or sell it to them. I'm sure they will buy it off you.
Yeah. Just don't overcharge them, because then they won't, because
It's the AHL. Yeah. So, yeah.
But Michael Carcone, definitely a awesome future piece that the Coyotes can use down the road, and I'm excited that he played as well as he did in the AHL with his 4 assists, which we didn't mention is the most first among assists in the All-Star weekend.
Yeah. Michael Carcone, AHL All-Star, future Coyote.
Gotta love it. Anything final you want to bring up before we close things off?
So I just want to say, although the AHL All-Star weekend events win on every other category, I do think the NHL All-Star had the best like just look and vibe. Like I like that Miami Vice theme.
I love
Otherwise,
the
it's love the jerseys, love all the T-shirts that I saw. Otherwise, it seems like the AHL did a much better event, and I think that's kind of sad.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine about the NHL All-Star. They're a little disappointed, but that's something that's going to open up a rabbit hole I don't want to go down to, because we're out of time on this episode of the Lockdown Coyotes podcast. So thanks everyone for listening to this episode. I hope you guys like what you heard. If you did, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, and on Instagram at LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leonio. Carl Pavlock is at Carl Pavlock FFH. Interact with us, ask a question you might have, we might answer right back, or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. And everyone for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys staying safe out there. Hope you guys staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.